Hello, hello. Alright, yeah.
So yeah, we're streaming again, so you can start.
Alright, yeah. So yeah, this is our game. It's called Key Labyrinth. I'd call it like spiritually akin to Pac-Man. I don't think that's necessarily wrong. You kind of run around the maze trying to avoid enemies, and you gather some keys, and when you gather all the keys, you win. This map zero here is we have a how to play page. It's not great, I'm gonna be honest. But you know, it really does tell you how to play, so that's helpful. So here's kind of like a demo map. Hi, there's an enemy. He kind of runs at me. He doesn't, thankfully for demo purposes.
We don't see anything. It's way too dark.
I see. How the fuck do I? Let's see.
Can you just? I mean, that's for your monitor. Can you just straight up up the ambient light easily?
I don't think so.
What's your movement?
Whatever, ja, shit.
Så bare ta høyreklikk og så open høyreklikk der. Ok. Så tar det open folder for shader. Så bare admin.
Because while they're setting that up, I can kind of like. So I've worked a lot on AI on this, and the original goal was to implement a star for the enemies, to have them kind of go around the maze and whatnot. For a bunch of reasons, that ended up not going so well. Part of it was working on top of kind of some temporary AI code. You know, it was a bit of a mess, but that's, you know, ended up just scrapping it and going for a very basic AI where it just kind of runs at you, and if it's, you know, a certain distance away, it says, well, okay, I can't catch him, and goes back to just like a roaming mode where it just kind of walks around randomly. And yeah, it is kind of dark because the atmosphere is a bit horror-y in some ways, but yeah.
I mean, of course, it's supposed to be.
What are the other light sources you use, except for the kind of base ambient one?
Specular, I think?
Yeah, it's the phone mode.
It's ambient, spectre, and diffuse.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you have this full implementation of Fong
Very cool.
with all components. That's cool.
I think lighting was mostly your thing, right?
Yeah. So we load levels with a text file, so we can create torches and walls and enemies and more keys.
Hey!
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's really bright now.
It's really bright.
Crisis model!
Very good model. So yeah, they kind of rotate to follow you. The problem is that me, without really thinking, just kind of used cosine for the rotation. And the problem with the cosine function is that, you know, it's kind of has 2 points where it is the same value. So if I go behind them, I ran into some spikes there. Don't mind that. But yeah, if I like kind of circle around behind them now, fuck so. Alright, yep, great. They just kind of back up towards me now. And there's no like, you know, I kind of got into this. For demo purposes, they don't kill you when they touch you. It's definitely not something we didn't have time to implement. It's intended. This is a spike. I don't, you know, it kills you if you touch it. Yep, it is very spike-like.
Very funny.
Yeah.
There is collision, but your kind of first-person camera kind of goes offset.
Yeah.
So
One collision works fine, both for you and for the
but
others.
if you just have walk into maybe the edge of the map, so you can see the skybox or something.
No, it's
So what's the face floating in front of you when you...
Right, so our model is also the Crisis Paragon, which has a head.
If you click
So-
tab, you can get another
Yeah.
view.
You can kind of see this sort of top down here.
Oh wow.
So, and
There
you
is a
have a
skybox.
skybox, but it's
It's not really used.
We haven't really-
Interior.
why not to use it yet? But
Yeah.
yeah, it's skybox is just a cube map, which is a
Yeah.
huge cube map.
This is the chest.
Yeah, the chest.
If you open the chest, you like so
You
ostensibly, yeah, because there can be any number of keys on the level, right? I've made kind of a demo level, which has some more gameplay in some ways. One thing actually, so when you walk into walls, collision can be like if you're in a wall even if it's kind of at an angle you're stuck there. But that actually, in my opinion, makes the gameplay kind of better, because it kind of gives kind of a horror feel to it, where you're kind of scrambling to get away from this wall while running away from these fuckers. Like it's great. So here's the level with some more keys, right? You can see collected keys 0 to 4. So if I just go up to this box and just like collect this key, then it kind of floats up. I've gathered that key now, and I can just, you know, do that for all of the keys, and then I'll do. Yeah.
How did you implement the player wall collision?
Well, it's so I can show that after, but basically it's just like for the step command, there's just like an if statement where, you know, if you're next to a wall, and we have some functions that check like positions for walls and shit. If you're next to a wall, it just doesn't update your position; it just sets it to the same thing.
So it's like axis aligned the bounding boxes, or
That's very possible if I knew what that meant. So I can kind of show this. It's in the info over here. Just, you know, if it isn't the wall and we just take the camera positions, then or like if the new position won't be in the wall, it lets you update, and the new position is like your current position plus the speed of your character. Right? And if that isn't the wall, you're allowed to update your position. If not, you're just not allowed to update your position.
Should we show like the app he made, or a
Uh,
screenshot of it?
Yeah, so there's kind of like, well, let's just show level loading first. So I kind of showed off swapping levels around there kind of hurriedly. All of the levels are a text file that look kind of like this, which is basically the dimension of it. And then 0 is just empty space. 1 would be a wall, but this level here doesn't have any like basic walls. 2 through 4 are kind of like, or 2 through 5 I think, are different facings of torches, right? So you can have like a north facing torch and a south facing torch. 8s are enemies, and 7 is a chest. 9 is the spike, I think. And like the level I was just on is this, which is a bit bigger. So you can go and just create levels here. It's not as fancy as the like other level editor, but it's there, you know. And for your mobile project, right, you're making an app that makes this a bit less of a pain in the ass, where you can kind of, you know, actually build a level. So
Yeah.
that's neat. And that's, you know, yeah.
Which 3D model formats do you use? And that kind of
yeah.
humanoid-like model, did you get from some of the online resources?
Yeah,
or-
yeah,
Yes.
Learn OpenGL. Yeah. We
Uh,
use a lot of Learn OpenGL tutorials.
Yes.
It's basically how we managed to learn 3D graphics.
Mhm.
The problem with that is use a very old version of Asim to load the models. Also, I think the model has to have a texture associated with it for the loading to work. So yeah, I did look at some other formats as well, because OBJ doesn't really support animation that good. So there's some other formats.
Yeah.
So if you had like, you know, more features that we would love to implement, would have been like better animations or something, like maybe some skeletal animation. I also made shadow mapping, but I made it like in my own project, and I didn't get time to put it in. So if you in the same Discord, we have like a bunch of screenshots of like weird OpenGL features we just tried, because none of us really knew how OpenGL worked before. So we
Yeah.
just tried to learn as many features as possible.
Just start messing around. This is, you know, a great demo of very functioning AI. Oh, yeah, that's actually one here. My favorite here, I think it's this. No, okay, never mind. I can't find it. Never mind. Moving on. Here are the
Yeah.
shadows that he made, but didn't quite merge. That is kind of part of this. Is that we have some kind of half-finished stuff that we didn't quite get time to merge. We have like a repo problem which we'll have to sort out from working, but that's fine.
I think that's
Yeah, well, that's going to be kind of show off here. Is there any questions so far? Like,
oh, we can jump and pause the game.
oh yeah, I didn't actually show that. You can actually jump. It doesn't serve much of a purpose because there aren't any like platforms. Oh yeah. There's no like CX going on. You're all in one plane, but
You can't jump on the chests.
I don't think I can.
No, you can't.
Let's find out.
You can jump above spikes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
to avoid them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm bad at it, and also, yeah. Alright. Let's see. No, it doesn't have collision because
Right.
yeah. Right. But you can jump. There also is a sprint key.
Yeah, if you hold shift, it's
See. Oh, there's also music. You may not have heard it, but we do. Yeah.
Have you had or thought of or started making a sort of goal that goes to the next level? So, for example, you reach the ladder and then you go to the next level, or have interconnected levels that way?
So I think that was kind of considered in the initial idea, but it works like reasonably well with these. It was considered, and we decided to prioritize other things.
Yeah, the general idea of the game is like, to me, somewhat similar to Pac-Man, but this has more potential in terms of gameplay. So how do you see the improvement of the gameplay?
Well, the first major improvement I'd make to gameplay is have enemies actually pose any kind of danger to you. Probably you make them a bit better at tracking, and then like when you have a real maze with enemies that can kind of track you through it, you can do some more complex layouts, because this game doesn't really work with if the corridors are too tight, the enemy gets a bit confused and just ping-pongs back between walls, which is why this map has like big open areas.
I suppose also adding a flashlight, basically just a basic spotlight that just
because ostensibly it has a bit of a horror feel to it, right? So keeping it kind of dark and claustrophobic would make it a bit better in that regard. As for how to actually add to the gameplay, different enemy types could also work. One thing that could actually be interesting is an enemy that can follow you through walls in a maze game and kind of breaks the rules in that game. In that way.
Hit me up,
yeah. I'm not sure what else to kind of cover it. Like the code is kind of just supports what we've demoed.
It's very basic.
Yeah.
Just very simple as possible way to achieve what we want.
The impression I get here, actually, you guys have AI next semester, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least in two cases, there's of course evidence already that this could be a sensible project to continue in that course, right? So, I mean, you can get, work on graphics on the side, whatever, but what you're kind of missing is the AI bit, right? So, but perhaps you can use that because there will be a considerable project component there as well. So just bear in mind for your own sake, if you want to play around and try different AIs and so on. I mean, you have the scenario, right? You just need to plug in the algorithms, basically, right? Which is not subject of that course here anyway. So,
but the AI you have now just walks to the player in straight line until it's collision, and then it just continues colliding until it's reached the end of the object it's colliding with.
So let me actually just open it's a very basic AI. It basically has two states: either it's roaming or it's following you. And if you walk within a certain distance, it just starts running straight at you. Even when it reaches you, like, because the game would end there normally, I haven't actually programmed anything for it to like stop chasing you at that point.
Since it's based like a sort of a state machine, I suppose you could add like a state that is like for each player, and then give it an attack state or something.
Yeah, you could do that. I had like an item state when I was just testing it. One bug I actually fixed because I just saw it here. It looked like this when I like looked at the code. I don't know how I messed that, but basically it never stops chasing you in the like version that's actually on Get, which is fun. Yeah, it's a very basic AI that just runs straight at you.
What's up with the edit with notepad up in the corner there?
That's an interesting question. It's just some hovering option from when I was selecting something else.
Thanks Windows.
Yeah, thanks Windows. In fairness, I have some kind of chunky add-ons to like the File Explorer, but I'm not sure what's up with that, basically. Yeah, I don't think we have anything else if there's no more questions.
No questions from anyone? No? Cool, well, in any case, thank you very much for your presentation.
Are you guys R4D?
Yes.
And yeah, the same question. Your usernames are your NTNU usernames, not GitLab, right? In the table.
Oh, what the? No, bad. That's wrong. Right. One second, it's the wrong screen. No, the other side. No? What? How did you choose? Why
Why can't I move the game over? What?
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Loris.
I'll. Nice graphics.
Is your laptop okay?
My laptop is it's surviving.
Okay, so now that this
Maybe.
is dead on the main screen.
Yeah, the main screen isn't working at all.
So there's no sound.
One sec.
Okay,
Okay, now.
just go.
Okay. Now.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Oh no! What the? What the? It doesn't look like that. It looks like this on my screen.
So it's works like.
Why? What?
So, how about you kill it?
Yeah, it's good.
Like, it's dead. I think it's in Parsec.
No, kill it.
I know I have killed it.
Yeah.
No,
It's
not
not that. No, it's literally that. It's
No.
not that.
It's a, I think, HDMI connection problem.
What's in the main rooms?
So
It doesn't even make sense in any context. It's not.
so what if you try to play it from there? Can you?
Sure.
No, I mean, it's not there.
It's not actually there. Like it's just an illusion.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
And that's what I tried.
No, turn it off and on again.
Our computer?
Yes.
It's just this thing is slow. You do not want me to turn it on and off again. That's
Yeah,
that's
so
what
turn it off and on.
Yeah, sure. That doesn't matter.
So we will have a lower performance now, but you know.
What in the 9 months?
In the 9 rounds indeed.
Well, it's boring swearing like every other person. Every random yes.
Well, it just takes time to blow up.
But there's that loading music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also the
What makes it take so long to load?
Probably because of PNG.
We didn't optimize.
Can you turn the music down a bit? Maybe there's a screen.
Turn on music. I don't know.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is our game Ambient Retro Future Road Drive. It's going to run quite slowly on this laptop because it's not very powerful. But
Yeah.
you can see it's basically
There is an animation to the car. It's
Yeah.
just
Laggy on the laptops.
there.
It's not optimized for laptops.
or anything really. It's just
So basically, you're moving the car. You've got to collect these notes
Yeah.
in time with music.
Like, because of a laptop, it
that
That's
doesn't
bugs
happen
out.
on my computer.
You can try plugging in the power.
That actually might help. Because you feel problem. But anyway, you get the idea. It does run at 60 FPS on a regular computer. The system you'd have run it down. Yeah. So yeah. So
also you just go back to the main menu.
we'll keep playing it.
Just keep playing it. Or, yeah.
So basically, in this game, we use a deferred renderer as opposed to a regular forward renderer. The difference being in a forward renderer, you apply the lighting calculations as you render the objects. In a deferred renderer, you render the objects to several textures that specify this is like the material properties. So your like your color, your specular, your metallic properties, emissive color, and then you apply a pass for each light on all those textures. So each light is only, so you don't have to re-render the scene for each light, or you don't have to have loops inside your rendering code for each light, if that makes sense.
Do you have glass, like the windows?
No,
The car?
there isn't. I'm not
I
sure.
think they are see-through.
Hmm?
I think we can see through them because of the
Oh yeah, you
glass.
can see through them. There's no material there, it's just an empty space, because that's what the model was like when you didn't have time to properly adjust that. So we use a scene graph, a custom one, which allows us, so we have a hierarchy. For example, we have road pieces. Each of those road pieces also has.
No, it's just an impossible piece of the game.
That doesn't happen on my computer either.
So we have road pieces. Each road piece, or some road pieces have street lights. Each street light has a point light or a spotlight in it. And those have a hierarchy. So it's actually the roads that are moving towards you, and that's also moving lights towards you. You can see we also have a bunch of post-processing effects. So we have a glow or a bloom effect, which makes bright things glow, like this. We have skybox and distance fog, and we also do FXAA, which is anti-aliasing. So it removes, or tries to remove like jaggedy lines by smoothing that, and we do gamma correction. So lighting light, yes.
Do you do like anisotropic filtering for the texture sampling?
No, we don't, because as you can see, there's not a lot of detailed textures, so it doesn't make sense to.
Yeah.
We don't need it. Oh yeah, so all of the rendering is physically based, so we use a physically based lighting model, so PBR.
Wait, you're doing this in debug mode?
Yeah, actually, that won't affect performance that much, it's GPU bottleneck. Alright. So it's PBR rendering, which basically means it's a slightly more complicated algorithm than Phong shading, but it's more realistic. And all of the units for lights and stuff are in physical space, so like lights are nits, basically. And then we do, direct gamma correction afterwards and tone mapping to reduce that back into image on the screen. I can talk about terrain, which is an interesting kind of feature of the game.
It's not actually random, we do have certain patterns, but the problem is when it is generating them, if it's lagging, it's going to have problems actually rendering or setting the cars at the correct locations at the correct times.
So the terrain that you see is generated on the GPU with an FBM noise, so it's basically a smooth noise function. And we send so there's two parts of it. There's these outlines, and then there's the kind of solid geometry you see. For the outlines, each of those squares is made out of two quads, so for the side and the side, and since it's tiled, you end up with quads. And then on the GPU, we calculate where there should be world space, and then position the quads so that the lines are always the same thickness on the screen. Does that make sense? For the flat, kind of solid terrain, it's basically just rendering an instance quad, positioning the y coordinate based on the light function in the vertex shader, and then calculating a normal in a geometry shader. Rendering wise, it's probably it.
Yeah. We read some files to check if we have some patterns that we spawn the cars in, and we have like 6 of them at the moment.
Easily to reproduce, it's just like the earlier texture map that
Show
showed
them?
is, you showed.
No, I have 6 of them actually.
Yes. Like here's what plan 5, so around.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of 0. 0 is empty space, 1 is the node intellect, and 2 is the car that's coming towards you.
And we also store your high score. If you have to actually get to the place, it's CMake places the EXE to actually get to it, though.
And it doesn't currently do much, it just tracks your 10 highest scores.
Actually, write it on the screen. We did store it at one point so that we would easily be able to display it, and then we changed it where we're remembering 10 of them, but at the same time the person also removed it from the program itself, so it's never stored much, so you can't actually access it, so you don't actually show it anymore.
We have a score track for your current run, at least in top one. You might have seen it before or after we crashed.
Yeah, also I tried to make it so it always, the sorting system, we had short timer, so the sorting didn't really come true. Did not have to test.
No, there wasn't high focus on the score tracking at least.
Yeah.
And what else?
How do you animate the collectibles? I don't know, some stuff that
With the notes. Yeah.
Yeah, the notes in the cars. They're just shifted towards the
Yeah,
player.
everything's just moving towards.
but it's also rotating, right?
No.
Can
They
you
just have a light on them.
They glow.
They go.
Well, they just glow and when they get closer to, for example, the lights of the car, they begin to glow brighter and turning more white.
can you run it again?
So following that, so architecture-wise, oh yeah.
Is there any particular reason you used FXAA over regular multisampling?
It's quicker.
Okay.
It's a bit, it's a bit easier. So
Yeah,
architecture-
those stuff like
the notes.
yeah, notes, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't rotate.
Oh, they don't rotate. Okay, but they change color, right?
They're random colors. So when they spawn, they're a certain color.
Oh, okay, I see.
Changes more the angle.
But the kind of, I guess, color change you're seeing is probably from the headlights of the car shining on the
Oh, okay, okay. I thought you used some animation for that.
They're not animated.
And the car is actually, I mean, we can change the speed to be something that should be visible even here. Because it's really quick, so with low frame rates you can see it. But
Are the wheels turning?
No.
no, we did consider doing that, and then we never actually did.
Like the problem with making the wheels is that they are car model, and if I remove the wheels from the car model to make the turn, it screwed with the texture that was pre-made for the car. So then I had to remake the textures for the wheels and the car.
Yeah.
So at one point I had it so that they were separate, but then we had a grey car that were missing the wheels. So yeah.
So architecture-wise, as mentioned before, we use like a scene graph. So we have a route, and then you can have models, and you can have groups, and then lights and cameras and things can go within that. It's using, I guess you could call it an immediate mode scene graph. So basically the whole graph is built up each frame. And that graph just describes the things like positions of lights and stuff. Actual data like models is always, like loaded beforehand and then just provided by reference into the scene graph. But that kind of immediate mode scene graph system means that it's really easy to reflect the game state. So if you have your game engine, you have your renderer, it's very easy to actually reflect the game state always in the renderer because you don't have to do like updates. You don't have to remember to update things. It's just copy across, if that makes sense. And it probably does have some cost efficiency-wise, but we're not bottlenecked by CPU in this. GPU is made from frame rate-wise, so it doesn't end up mattering. So, do you want to, should we can show some code?
Yeah, should we start with?
I can show so if we go into the renderer, we have a scene graph. And a scene graph is obviously made of nodes. So a node has a few different functions. So each node has a transformation, which is applied in a cascade. So the top node has a transformation and the node below that has a transformation, and they're combined together. Each node can bind a camera, render a geometry, and render lights. So typically your node will do one of those things. So if you have a camera node, it's going to bind a camera, and that just basically uploads the camera data to the GPU. And if you have a geometry node, it's going to render your geometry. If you have a light node, it's going to render your lights. So, for example, a geometry node, as you can see, it doesn't have camera, it doesn't have lights. It literally just calls a render function on the model that it actually wants to display, using the transformation that's calculated from that cascade. And that a model is just loaded with ASIM. So, let's scroll down to the model. Yeah, so we just import it with ASIM. That's really, really simple. We load images. You guys all know that. Yeah.
How does gameplay programming fit into this scene graph of yours?
So, as I mentioned before, the engine basically just generates the scene graph each frame.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So if you imagine you have your different components of your game engine, however that's structured, it doesn't. The two things don't need to care about each other, basically. Yeah, and it can just go through and kind of build up the scene graph, submit it, all done. Yeah. So let's say we have a camera. Cameras just upload their state to the GPU. Easy. Lights. Oh, one thing I'm not sure if you know before. So there are two types of lights. There's a directional light for the sun, and there are spotlights which have a position and a direction, and then kind of a cone angle. Point light, the directional light has shadow. So if you run it again, you'll see that the vehicles have like shadows from the sun. The point lights in this version of the game don't, mostly because there's so many point lights that would be really, really slow. A possible future extension could be to specify if a point light can have a shadow, like enable it or not, but we didn't do that for this one. So you can see like the shadow of the car, the mirrors of the car have a shadow, the spotlight, the streetlights have a shadow, the lights have a shadow. Sure there's much else I wanted to say about the renderer, but yeah. So basically one of the key design goals for this was to be able to really easily separate the renderer from the game engine. So like the whole scene graph thing and the rest, like the components to make up the renderer are very separate. So like in our case, I worked on the renderer and then these guys mostly did the game engine stuff and we didn't need to care about the two parts.
Many questions about anything specific or?
Pretty expensive, the model. It's, a lot of different features they packed in from different perspectives. So tough to own. So if you were to extend the model, right? What would you do next? Like both in direction of gameplay, but also architecturally.
We would like to improve the engine a bit, fix the high score issue that we were talking about earlier.
Fix this scoring speed system I created because it just stops almost working, increasing.
So you had, as I mentioned, problems where when the frame rate was lower, you were unable to place the
it's more like
segments correctly?
It's more like it builds up hope to place them, then places them together.
Oh, so every wait, you're moving it with delta time, right? Because it didn't move any slower to my perception.
Yeah, we are using time. It is time based. However, it's placing everything per frame. So it's like, oh, now so much time I've gone, then it's time to place it based on this time that its here it should be. So it's based on time. The problem is that it's spawned. But do we actually spawn it correctly in time behind the cars?
Yeah, it spawns after so much time is gone.
But then it's the next frame basically. Do we then we do not then alter the exact coordinates based on if some frames have been lost? Which we could have added that. That would probably have been fixed. The fact that the cars sometimes got 5 in a row, for example.
So it doesn't actually check the positions and multiply the positions by how far you are in the level. Okay.
Did you consider like spawning them based on the distance you've traveled instead of like a fixed time?
I considered it, but then it kind of stopped working, and then I made it back into time because it was even worse on the good GPU.
Going back to the possible enhancements from the render perspective, one major thing is probably performance. Obviously, it's a bit slow on this laptop. And from what I'm aware, the major thing that's happening there is the cost of all the lights. Because currently we're not properly, masking lights. So each light is running a pass that affects the whole screen. If you've got, say, 60 lights, it's going to be running a pass on the whole screen 60 times. Whereas a possible way to optimize that would be to only render, for the pixels that are actually going to be affected. So, for example, render like a cone geometry, and then the shader for that would be to the right. Yeah.
Did you implement shadows using geometry shaders?
No, the shadows just regular shadow mapping.
Could I have access to the repository?
Way to do that.
It's only made it. I'll see what I can do.
Just do it.
And
Didn't I make it public?
I'm pretty sure you did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did.
So while these guys are messing around,
Are you logged in?
Yes.
You should have.
so one interesting thing I tried for this was using compute shaders. So our post-processing and the lighting classes use compute shaders. Basically, a compute shader. So you know you have like your pixel shader and your fragment shader and your vertex shader. A compute shader is basically, instead of rendering geometry, you just say, I want to run this shader this many times, and it runs the shader that many times. So in our case, say for post-processing, you say, I want to run it width times height times, and it just runs it for each pixel. And that can be a little bit better performance-wise because you don't have to go through the whole rasterization stage of like, taking your vertices, figuring out which pixels are filled. Well, I mean, the GPU does that, but you don't need to do that because it's using compute shader. And you can also bypass some things that regular, like if a post-processing pipeline, you normally need two textures, you can sample from one right to the other. In a compute shader, you can read and write from the same time using an unaudited access. I don't remember what they call them. OpenGL, but you combine buffers and you can read and write the same thing. And you can also do some things like discarding pixels, but yeah. Yes. So, any other questions?
One thing that is kind of very apparent is jumping from lane to lane, smooth
There is an
movement.
animation,
It
it's
is
the
animation.
speed. If we go to the const, we can actually slow it down quite significantly.
Yeah, so that's just a frame rate problem. There is an animation there which you
Oh,
can
there?
see.
Const.
So if you probably run it on like your computer, it'll be fine.
You trust.
We can also just slow it down, like we could. Where is the valuable car animation stat? Just increase that. And you're like, no.
So if
Absolutely not.
some of the
But,
laptop is working properly, then you would be able to see that.
Yeah. I think per måneds ears med från France in August.
I'm sure it's fine. Okay, now it might not jump instantly because the animation is significantly slower. So it's not right.
But of course, you made a change. Now you can build the whole thing.
Oh, right. That's,
Everything is dependent on the constants.
that is true.
Yeah, gameplay wise, I think aesthetically it's pretty good, but it would be like more fun if you have different models for opposite kind of cars coming in the opposite direction, different colors, different like trucks and tiny cars and stuff like
I
that.
looked for to see if I could find some more, but every time I tried to load them, they just didn't work. The objects were corrupt or something.
Why? Should they be identical?
You can at least see the animation a little now. Oh. It also is not linear, it slows down, it's slower in the beginning and in the ends.
Yeah, but
Using a slice
the
wheel.
position changes immediately, so you can change your position right before you hit the car, and the model
Yes.
will click through.
That is true. I did not change that one, so yeah, I could have done that a bit. So if we were going to continue working on this, I would probably fix that one.
Seems we like in cars again, but
How does the collision detection
Yeah,
work?
this is the pattern that is easy mode.
Okay. That's a collision detection one.
Currently it's just, yeah, showcase that. It's basically just you have this value of 0 to 4 and it changes instantly.
And then it detects that there's a car on that, and your car is there, you die.
Yeah, basically.
So I think it's just like two units.
Yeah, okay. So it's like a grid, basically?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we can-
Yeah.
Any other questions?
No, I think
Very good.
see what kind of says, but I don't think
You don't have access to the kids.
that's right.
But I did made it public.
Make it public again.
And
Exactly, it's public.
Make it private again, then make it public again.
Very good.
also, please make sure that there are NTNU usernames because some of them are really weird.
Mine is correct at least.
Yeah.
So this applies to all other groups as well. Just check that your repo is accessible in public stuff, right? So that's a common issue that we have. That
Just go into incognito mode and see if you can still view it.
so exactly nice. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you very much for the effort. Quite involved. Very different, very diverse
Yeah.
approaches here. So,
And surprisingly, no one did Pac-Man actually.
well, we
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
that's really back.
Is there anyone?
If one of doing Pac-Man, then we kind of.
So we have one move tomorrow, right? So you guys.
In my group, and we did not do Pac-Man.
Yeah. But is there any other group we know of?
But there were 6 entries on the GitLab, so someone's
Well, they may
missing.
show up tomorrow. Perhaps they need the night to fix the bugs.
Yeah.
Next time.
But in any case, it's really thank you for showing up and showing your diverse kind of solutions. It's always kind of I think while it feels like you are supposed to present something, I think it's a brilliant opportunity for everyone to learn and see certain things, how things are done differently. Because for example, you have of course similarities in what you did, but you approach it very differently, right? So you put a very different emphasis on the different aspects. So and I think everyone gets an appreciation. Cool. Especially if it's so related. How could you have done it, or how did you do it differently, for example, right? So, and so yeah, okay. So I guess there's this, and we hadn't had a car racing game yet, so that was the first one. Interesting idea. I would have liked to see something like the opportunity or the. Well, that doesn't relate to the graphics challenge per se, but thinking about it from a gameplay perspective, in order to have a bit more complexity in terms of interaction. It could be that you could, for example, consider acceleration more explicitly, right, as an interactive means for the user. So then grade performance according to that, right? So I mean, get more or less high score and so on, but also perhaps assess the risk affinity of the user. But perhaps you can do a bit of psychology games there, how they would behave in a real environment, because it plays with this intuition. So I think there's great potential in this game.
By the way, on the announcement, as the last one, the time is still in Central European time, not summer time. There's 50 minutes left on the showcase, and we began 1 hour earlier.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right.
That's right. So yeah, we always work in CET. We probably need to.
Yeah, it's
yeah. And indeed.
Daylight savings.
Daylight savings. Well, that's only 2 more years, right? 2021 is over. So
yeah.
The EU agreed by largely, and I believe Norway will follow. Yeah. The question is which one we converge on, right? Any favorites? Now you can pick.
The opposite of the neighbors to make everyone hate each other.
That's the thing that they agreed on, that they will not agree on different ones. That's the only thing they decided on. They have said which one we go for, but if we pick one, we all pick the same. There will be interesting consensus finding, I guess. But so the thing is just there will be.
Couldn't that end with 2 different time zones having the same time zone?
I'm sorry.
Let's say Russia is, for example, -1, not +1. Wrong, but it's not really good, it doesn't matter. But imagine that we would have the same time as that.
Yeah, it's.
Russia have like multiple time zones. Yeah, but ignore Asia.
So yeah, it's a risk. I mean, there's if you realistically look at the map, then you wouldn't expect Spain to be in the European time zone, right? Because Portugal is more in the British time zone, right? So you would expect the same for Spain, given the what is it? The longitude there, right? So yeah. Anyway, okay. Since you don't have opinions, bad luck. So we just throw a dice and see what comes out of it. But thanks for highlighting this issue, of course. Yeah. Regarding the exam, let's consider that it's summertime, right? So very important. It's 12 o'clock summertime. Also, we'll probably meet up between. Well.
So do you mean our time zone then?
The current time zone that in Norway, Norwegian time zone. Right, cool. Let's stick to that. Yes, that's the first class I would need to especially
Yeah.
emphasize that we're working in this time zone, right? It's not like the time zone's changed from here to A254, but you never know, right? Things can change quickly nowadays, you know. Yes.
Oh yeah, and one announcement
Yep.
regarding exams. Just 8 of you have signed up in the Google form for the time slots. So if you go to the wiki and under announcements, exam and exam presentation dates, like there is a link. So please select the time slot for your exam. It's on 9th of May, but like there are 20 minutes per person, so you can select.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we meet you tomorrow again. Please be fair, since everyone kind of tried to listen to yours. So see if you can show up tomorrow to see what the remaining groups have to say, even if it's only 1 or 2 or so on. But still, I think it's worthwhile. Because if we don't show up, we tell them what the exam will be about. No pressure. Okay. Cool. Any questions so far? Oh, I see you
Do you
tomorrow.
have access to the repo now?
Oh yeah. Good one. I what? Yes.
Good.
What did you do?
It was public, but I forgot to actually allow everyone access to some parts of it. So it wasn't just one thing I have to change. It was, so.
No.
That's done.
Cool. Well, then, see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Saying because that was a sales background.
12 o'clock.
Yeah, quarter.
Det vil nok bli sånn 30 spørsmål.